A great meeting. So Abby.
Well, thank you very much, Houston. Hi, everybody. For those of you who I haven't met yet, I'm Abby. If you're calling me Abigail, I'm assuming that I've done something wrong. So I'm Abby Smith, the Deputy Executive Director for the FAA's UAS Integration Office. I'm really excited to be here for my first AAAC meeting in this capacity. It was just about a year ago when the committee was tasked to develop recommendations on incorporating drone and AAM operations into K through 12 curriculums. This task was accepted by Task Group 12, which was led by co-chairs Dr. Paul Hsu, president of the Hsu Educational Foundation, and Mr. Brian Wynn, president of the Association for Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International, AUVSI. We received the task group's final response in February of this year, and we'd really like to thank all the members and the incredible co-chairs for your hard work on it. Of course, thanks goes to Captain Mills for your overall leadership in the AAAC. The recommendations the task group provided were very thoughtful and thorough and have given the FAA lots to consider. I was especially blown away by the AAAC's finding on the number of drone technicians and pilots needed to enter the U.S. workforce in the next few years. Are you ready for these numbers? By 2023, we'll need 85,000 new workers. That's 2.3% of that year's entire graduating high school class. So if you look on the slide, there's additional number. Oh, sorry about that, Kamisha. So there's more numbers on there, but this number is going to continue to grow, folks, and we've got a real situation on our hands. Okay, back on track. The task group recommendations focused on three main areas. First, making educational content and resources readily accessible. Secondly, building connections for action and cultural transformation. And third, delivering aviation-specific curriculums. We agree that these are all important priorities, and we intend to dedicate resources to each. As we move forward, we will continue to work with all of you to ensure that we're prioritizing to meet the needs of stakeholders, particularly the future workforce, in the best order possible. As you know, safety is our North Star. We're committed to integrating user technologies into our system safely and efficiently. We'll work for the American public, especially our stakeholders, and our success depends on the respect, diversity, collaboration, and commitment of our workforce. I do want to let you know that we've formed 2 additional federal advisory committees, as the FAA's Reauthorization Act of 2018 required. They are the Women in Aviation Advisory Board and the Youth Access to American Jobs in Aviation Task Force. These federal advisory committees are also considering similar questions around expanding access to aerospace careers for diverse and well-qualified individuals. We intend to use their findings, as well as the findings of the AAAC, to develop a comprehensive plan of action. Before we provide the committee with our response to the task group's recommendation, I'd like to point you to a list highlighting some of the FAA's most recent and current activities related to STEM outreach. Happily, these existing STEM-related activities already support the spirit of the AAAC recommendations made by Task Group 12. Please feel free to review the list at your convenience. I'm not going to read it. And we're always available to answer any questions or offer more information if you need it. So, focus area 1, make content and resources readily available. Moving on to the recommendations for making content and resources readily available, toward that end, the task group's first recommendation was that we expand access to resources for teachers and students. The FAA is committed to making resources both available and accessible. We agree that it is important to leverage our existing programs, such as the Workforce Development Grant Programs for Aviation Maintenance and Pilots, the Aviation Career Education Academy, and the Drone Safety Day and we appreciate the AAAC's recognition of those existing resources and tools. To give you a taste of how the workforce development grant programs are operating, I want to mention that the FY20 aircraft pilot grants were awarded to 4 CTI schools to assist high schools in enhancing their curricula, to help students take the Part 107 test, and to explore practical applications in the UAS field. One grant recipient, the CTI program at the University of North Dakota, or UND, has reported hosting a couple of highly effective events to date. Their grant reaches into 5 regions, multi-states, and also extends into reservations for the career and technical education programs at the high school level. Teachers that attended the UND event in North Dakota were delighted with the resources that are being provided, and especially that the university will not leave them high and dry. Another grant recipient, Elizabeth State University, just finished their first week-long summer, quote, Aerospace Aviation and Drone Exploration Academy, and will be closing the second Academy event this Friday. They've had a year-round cohort of 80 students who will begin in fall of 22. The cohort consists of rising junior and senior high school students who will be taking college courses to prepare for private pilot ground and Part 107 certification. We're especially happy that ECSU was awarded a grant as one of 2 historically Black colleges and universities that currently participate in the CTI program. There are, of course, a number of other existing programs, but I wanted to assure you that we will also continue dedicating resources to providing additional materials for educators as needed. On recommendation 2, we know that mentors and volunteers are key to helping inspire future generations of aviation workers. We already have a number of FAA employee outreach representatives through our STEM AVSED program and our FAAST, or FAST, Drone Pros program, has volunteers across the US. We want to build that program even further, but this is just a beginning. We're committed to building on this foundation and creating a formalized network to inspire students and help grow the drone and AAM communities. In recommendation 3, Task Group 12 proposed that the FAA collect a number of national and state and regional resources and use them to build an online repository for use by educators. We appreciate the task group taking the time to gather and share these resources with us and the drone community. We all benefit from shared information, which is why we'll continue to provide links to a number of informational resources when available, and continue to grow the resources and curriculum available to educators participating in our UAS Collegiate Training Initiative program. We're committed to getting this information and other resources to educators from K to postdoctoral across the country. The focus area 2 was around building connections for action and cultural transformation. Turning to this second focus area, Task Group 12's 4th recommendation calls for the use of public-private partnerships to encourage industry participation in K-12 education. The FAA couldn't be happier to receive this recommendation, since we know that the only way to meet future workforce needs is to work together and to make certain that students are exposed to aviation-related information early and often. The FAA already has experience with the benefits of public-private partnerships, and the STEM Aviation and Space Education, or STEM AVSED, because we love our acronyms, program currently has 14 such participants at the national level. Additionally, currently 90 schools participate in our UAS CTI program, and that number continues to grow. And we need to expand it. We want to work with all of you to help us build resources that will teach the aviation professionals of tomorrow. Industry can bring a unique perspective and a variety of resources to the table, and that can only mean good things for all of us, most especially the future workforce. Some of you may already know that addressing gender bias in STEM fields is a cause I'm passionate about. The FAA and our UAS Integration Office in particular have adopted this cause recently with both energy and thoughtfulness. Of course, we owe a lot of that enthusiasm to the AAAC's Task Group 10, which provided important recommendations on eliminating gendered language in the drone and AAM spheres. We've made progress, but we have more to do. I'm comfortable, however, saying that the FAA is already committed to addressing gender bias in STEM fields, not just in terms of gendered language, but in other areas of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. I'm excited to see how much we can do to make anyone who's interested and confident that there is a place in aerospace community for them. You know, I'm very proud of our UAS CTI program, and I was happy to see that the task group recognizes its potential to help transform aviation culture. As I mentioned, I do believe it's important to reach kids at an early age with exposure to aviation careers and information. I also know, however, that the college level is often the first chance for students to fully develop their interest more completely. We need to make sure that they can join robust programs when they arrive. The CTO program is growing all the time, and we pledge to continue to dedicate resources to the program so that we can grow in terms not just of breadth, but depth as well. Recommendation 7 concerns the FAA forming an interagency working group with the Department of Education and Industry. There are several interagency working groups focused broadly on STEM, and it's likely that this recommendation can be addressed in an already existing forum. Nevertheless, we will consider how we can broaden collaboration across the federal government and also how we can continue to engage with state, local, tribal, and territorial governments to help train tomorrow's aerospace professionals with the needs of industry in mind. Again, the FAA is aware that we must all work together to meet the challenge of cultural transformation in the aviation arena. So let's talk about focus area 3, deliver aviation specific curricula. With recommendation number 8, the task group was interested to see the FAA acknowledge and promote National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, standards to allow for qualitative evaluation of systems capabilities and remote pilot competency. To respond, I'll mention that the FAA is in the practice of collaborating with NIST and other standards bodies on these relevant issues, and that will continue to do so. I should also mention that within the context of FAA NIST drone research collaboration, we are aware of NIST's efforts to develop and test remote pilot proficiency standards. Task Group 12's 9th recommendation is to create grade 8 through 12 aviation-specific STEM curricula modeled on CTE CyberNet. CTE CyberNet is a Department of Education program that works to increase the number of career and technical education teachers who can effectively prepare students for cybersecurity education and careers. The FAA is aware of other organizations, such as the Department of Education, with existing curricula and initiatives that may be useful as models or otherwise in carrying out the goals of this recommendation. We also understand that successfully meeting future workforce requirements will mean working with others to put more resources into the hands of educators, and we're committed to doing so. For example, we're currently working with our Know Before You Fly partners to make drone kits, including lesson plans, available for school and organizational use. We look forward to additional opportunities to offer such resources to those teaching drone and AAM principles to students. I've talked previously about the FAA's understanding that we will need to dedicate additional resources to K through 12 aviation specific STEM needs. We will work to make appropriate additional resources available and accessible. We are again committing to putting these resources in the hands of educators who are best positioned to maximize their impact. So in conclusion, I want to thank Task Group 12 for their thoughtful response to this tasking. We really appreciate the recommendations you've provided and the resources you've highlighted. At the FAA, we're keenly aware of the imperative to ramp up our efforts to meet future aviation workforce needs. We've already started the process, and we continue to actively plan future efforts. Going forward, we will use the task group recommendations to inform our approach. We're also aware that none of our efforts will achieve maximum results unless we put resources into the hands of educators and unless we work with all available stakeholder groups. We thank the members of the AAAC for your enthusiasm towards that end. If you'd like to review the FAA's written response to the Task Group 12 recommendations, you can find it in the ebook from this meeting. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present our response to this tasking, and I'm open for questions or comments.
Yes, Dr. Shu.
Thank you, Chair Mel. On behalf of TG12, I just want to thank FAA for your effort to respond to our recommendation. And I want to thank my co-chair Brian Nguyen, and all my colleagues. It was an 8-month effort, and so we're so glad we did it. Just a couple of comments and a couple of recommendation for FAA to consider very quickly. On the on recommendation number 1, I feel like maybe there's some sort of a dashboard for the FAA to help the rural school teachers when they want to have some resources available. They can go to one site, kind of a one button to push, and I think that'd probably be easier. Recommendation number 3. Yes, the UAS CTI is important, but also, not just the college level, but also the K-12, I think is also very important. Recommendation number 4, the PPP, public-private partnership. The true essence of this things is for FAA to provide any kind of incentives to the private companies, and so if they have the best practice, whatever, and the FAA might be able to to provide any kind of a benefit or something, because that's the true essence of a public-private partnership, because everybody wins. It's not just a win-win, it's a win-win-win. If it's something we do like K-12, it could be multiple wins. So that's the one recommendation for your consideration. And then on the conclusion, I'm just wondering if there's any kind of a timetable that FAA can provide us to achieve to the next level, or any kind of a achievable majors on this thing. So thank you.
So if you want, did you want to comment first, Brian, or give Abby an opportunity to respond? Yeah. So thank you,
Well,
Dr. Shu.
so number 1, my pen was busy as you were talking. So I took down all your notes. And as far as the timeline goes, we are waiting for the youth advisory committee's final report, because we want to do something very strategic and comprehensive. And so that was in my earlier remarks. That's what I wanted to allude to: the Women in Aviation Advisory Board, and then the Youth Workforce Advisory Committee as well. Because we thought, instead of doing 3 in parallel, it would be a lot more effective, because there's so much overlap in the K through 12 space, that we waited and do something that's more strategic with all of them, but making sure that if there's anything unique in the AAAC report, that we capture that as well. So what I think that report is due early fall. And so we'll come out with a strategic plan. In the meantime, we're going to chip away at the feedback that we've already gotten on the programs that we have. I hope, and so stand by. Thank you.
Okay, Brian?
Thank you, Houston, and thank you, Abby. I wanted to just return kudos to Dr. Shu. Paul and I think worked really, really well together, but it was an extraordinarily good effort on the part of everyone involved. I'm going to miss somebody here, but Kenji, Vic, Brad, et cetera. I mean, it was just, and Bob, it was a great group. And I think a little overwhelming. Abby started with the numbers that Dave Messina did a great job of digging out. And the numbers are really daunting, but you know what? We have those numbers for the entire aviation sector. And I think the really good news that we settled on or reinforced was that this is, I've used the term and others use it now, gateway. This is kind of a gateway to aviation, and we're getting people interested at a very early age, and that's really the key to success over the medium term. You know, we call demographics the dismal science, because it takes a long time to change numbers, and our numbers are not moving in the right direction right now, either from a diversity standpoint or from an overall absolute standpoint. So we want to attract more people into this sector. And the good news is we have a great tool to do it. So this is, and it's not just specific to UAS or AAM. It's important for all of the entire aviation sector. And I think what was a little daunting about this particular task was that we had, you know, in order to be effective, we need to think over the long term. Houston, you've made me very conscious of this in the context of diversity. We need to start very, very early. So I think that's the reason why we think it's so important. The recommendations are so important, and so pleased to have such a good response. And we stand ready. All the organizations in this room are here effectively understanding this problem and ready to work with you on it. So, but we need your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I just, the amount of conversation these recommendations have started and the amount of thought that is going into even beyond these recommendations. So for example, there's a tremendous conversation going on about not only aviation programs, but making sure that people in other areas understand how aviation can benefit their work. Agriculture, forestry, photography, all these areas. And we've seen in the past, once we get folks interested in aviation, they expand the envelope of all the people who participate in aviation. And they become more involved, and they become aware of aviation safety and all of that. So we're looking for those force multipliers now too, you know, that we don't just go to a K through 12 and emphasize only aviation, that we go out and make sure everyone knows how aviation can enhance their jobs, particularly in the small UAS or drone community. These are often sensors. It's not just about flying, it's about how they collect data that's later used in another application. So it's really started. I'm so grateful for these recommendations, because everywhere I go, people are talking about the workforce of the future and how we get everyone engaged or as many people as possible engaged as young as possible.
So I know Jazz Baga has a question, has his hand up.
Hi, good morning. Houston, I'm jealous about the bourbon, so maybe we'll take a rain check on that. Abby, thank you for thank you for this presentation. The question I have here is, I think there's a lot of people on this line that all do really cool things with drones, you know, from counter UAS to, you know, really great projects. When you think of education, we would love some guidance on what you need. What I mean by this is we've got this virtual kind of hybrid environment going forward. How do we create these little bite-sized pieces of content that capture the children with, you know, the cool of this industry? And the question would be for you folks is that where can we get some architecture on, you know, what you need for content? I think there's a lot of people here that could create content, and then how do you distribute that content? Thank you.
So, Jazz, in one of my former jobs, I was the director for technical training for air traffic controllers, technicians, and engineers at FAA. And microlearning, I think, is what you're talking about. And I think that those bite-sized learning elements are a really powerful way to capture people's imagination and attention. And I thank you for that. Again, I've got my pen busy. I don't know if you can see it from there, but
Yeah.
and we'll take that IOU. Thank you so much for that.
So in terms of a lot of these things, there is a lot of outreach going on, and that was part of what we determined in the work group. But the one of the key things is whenever we do STEM outreach in the university, we're trying to, of course, go to underserved communities, really in our state reach the Alaska Native population, really taking it and making it applicable to what they are doing, what they see every day is one of those things that really engages them. And in terms of the kids, we always do a career talk. And we also talk about what courses they need to take. So we emphasize you need to actually take communications classes because you're going to be talking to stakeholders. You need to be able to read and write because you're going to be in this business. You need to take business classes if you want to be a business owner. But we also do talk cinematography and law enforcement. And so kids really like, oh, I can do drones and all of these other things. And it's exciting. You get them engaged and you get them thinking beyond just the fact we're flying pickup trucks. You know, it's really what is the mission? What is the payload to get them thinking, oh, I can survey, you know, the river near my house and find out whether or not we're going to have flooding from ice jams. The kids start thinking about going beyond and doing the imagery and all those other things. And so if you really can relate it to what they want every day and give them that bite size, think about the possibilities, they'll take it and run and think of things you've never thought about.
Thank you, Kathy. David, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. A little bit more practical money. Because nothing happens around here without it. Quick question. In terms of the workforce grants that the FAA got as part of the last budget reauthorization, I'm wondering about, if I recollect, it was like on the order of about 10 million. It may have been annually. I'd like to know what the subscription rate for that has been. In other words, are you oversubscribed for that, i.e. more applications than you have money? And then if you have any statistics on the graduation rates, because if it's working, I think it's something that we would definitely be interested in looking for more opportunities, working with Congress on that. Thanks.
All right, thanks. I've got that IOU.
Yes, Roby?
I think Dave, we were on the same wavelength there. I was going to also ask that similar question from a congressional resource perspective, in terms of, has there been an effort to, you know, if Congress asks us how many resources are going into all this, you know, this general area of activity, and then what's the delta to what's your really ideal or optimal vision? That may be interesting to kind of see, not only from an FAA perspective, but as you bring in some of the other agencies like NASA, or as you mentioned, the Department of Education. The other thing I would just mention is that, you know, the president has nominated Dr. Arthi Prabhakar, former DARPA director, to now be the new director of Office of Science and Technology Policy. And she's very passionate about STEM and diversity. And when she gets confirmed by the Senate, she could be also another strong advocate within the White House in the broader set of STEM activities.
Thank you. Kenji, change your mind? Okay. Well, thank you, Houston, and thank you, AAAC.
Okay, I just want to say, wow, it's amazing. And thank you, Jay, for tasking AAAC with this monumental task. I was thinking of two the most impactful taskings that this team has worked on. The gender neutral language, which absolutely will transform how people think about this industry. And I'll just, I'll point over to Brian, the formerly the organization of, unmanned vehicle, systems, now the the organization of the Association for Uncrewed Vehicle Systems. So it's more than just words, right? It's actions, activity, the same thing with, the noticed air crew, right? It's those are the type of things that, and I can tell you from a flight perspective in my operations, I had pilots saying, what are we doing? Why did they change that? It's like, so it starts a conversation, right? Which leads to change, and people need to understand the why. And so when I think about, this initiative and the generational impact it's going to have, it's very, very powerful, for the future. And I know yesterday in a bunch of meetings, manpower across the aviation sector, I know, Captain DePito agree with this, manpower is one of those issues that just continues to come up in this community. And especially for, this growing community, even more so because there's competing resources across the board. And so this initiative, really wanted to applaud, Jay, you, Abby, and the team for taking a strategic approach. I think these recommendations integrated with the other advisory committees will definitely mean that this will be meaningful, lasting impact for years to come. So just kudos to the team for all the great work. So, I was reading a book recently called The Power of Moments. And one of the precepts in there is, pride, certain moments, fill you with pride. This is definitely one of those moments, I think, for us as a committee that we can all be very prideful of. So well done. So with that, we'll move forward.